adopted by the gun lobby, let me tell you what I think about the so-called gun debate. Yes, there is a mental health issue. Yes, anyone, whether it is in Las Vegas or Newtown or what happened this week in Florida that kills many, many people or any people, has a mental health problem. That is not the problem alone. It is part of the problem. The other part is that they have access to legally get automatic military-style weapons. The fact that all over the world you have people that have health problems, mental health problems, but they don't have access to military-style weapons. And that is what we're going to have to confront, is not only have we not adequately dealt with the mental health issue, we have made it where, as in the case of the Florida shooter, where people with mental health issues or without them can legally buy weapons that are only to be used for military war operations. And that in itself is sick to me. And that's where we start today. Joining me now is Gina Lawden. She's a member of Trump's Media Advisory Board. Maria Teresa Kumar, president of Voto Latina. And Heather Foster, a former White House advisor to President Obama. Let me start with you, Heather. When President Obama was faced with a mass killing, first of all, he responded immediately. We see this president took a day to say anything. But then he also responded to the issue at hand in terms of guns and in terms of access to weapons. This president has gone all the way away from that. Many of us say he's been supported by the NRA, that according to all data we can find, they spent at least $21 million, the NRA, on his campaign. So whether it is he's really pro having assault weapons or whether he is someone that has to defer to his supporters in the NRA, he will not deal with this issue, which contrasts with the Obama administration that you were part of.
Yes, Reverend Al. I mean, we've seen across this week that President Trump had opportunity to come out, right, and really talk strongly about gun violence in this country. But we didn't quite see that. We did see him address what happened, and we did hear that he went to Florida to meet with families. But I think it's very clear that you won't see a lot of discussion around the gun vote.
Now, why do you think, Gina, that he will not come forthright? He met with a couple of families at the Hospital of Survivors, but he certainly didn't meet with all of them. Some of them were out telling the press he needs to deal with guns. Why won't he deal with the issue, even if it's one that's going to disagree with their position? And how does he get into this craziness of trying to connect it to the Russian investigation?
Well, I think the craziness is the condition of an FBI that does not follow up, Reverend, on the multiple warnings they had that this person was a killer. And I think when we look at that sort of corruption and disarray in our government agencies, that is one of the very first things that I believe the president will deal with, and I think he'll deal with it creatively and effectively, like he has the economy and so many other things.
So,
and this president is one who has...
You're saying that there's some corruption in the FBI and they're not dealing with the signals they had on the shooter, and that the president will deal with that, and that the gun...
I think he'll deal with that. I think he'll deal with a lot of things.
Let me finish asking the question.
Sure.
Before you try to answer a question you haven't heard. You do not think that the gun issue, that was what I asked you, is something that is fundamental to this, fundamental to the families of the victims that are raising this, that the president has a responsibility to answer that directly and forthrightly?
You and I agree on the fact that this needs to be addressed, and I believe the president absolutely will address it, along with the problems where the FBI fell down, along with the problems that we have turned our schools essentially into homicidal safe harbors, where someone knows they can go with a gun because it's a gun-free zone, and they know that they won't be confronted with death. And so there are lots of things that need to be fixed about this. You know, we look at, it's hard to answer the questions, Reverend, because you and I agree there's a spiritual aspect here. You and I agree that something needs to be done to fix the brokenness of the fact that a killer can go into a school like this and do this. But we look at where the toughest gun control laws are in the country, and that would be Chicago, and we see the death rates there. And we're confounded again about exactly how to get the guns out of the hands of the bad people.
Chicago has very tough gun laws, but Chicago can't deal with the fact that right across the border in Indiana, they can sell these assault weapons and easily get them into Chicago. But Maria, let me go to you a minute. Last night, the president not only had he linked this to the Russian investigation, something I want to get back to. I don't want to ignore, in my opinion, how bizarre that is. But he linked it to immigration policy and the gun policy, tweeting, just like they don't want to solve the DACA problem, why didn't the Democrats pass gun control legislation when they had both the House and the Senate during the Obama administration? Because they didn't want to, and now they just talk. So he's looping DACA, he's looping everything in, blaming the Democrats. I mean, does this man have any sensitivity at all, Maria, to what he's doing in terms of people are burying their dead 17 people as a result of assault weapon attack in Florida, as well as you have dreamers living on the edge now? I mean, where is the respect and regard for people that have lost human beings and the others that are living on the verge of uncertainty here?
Let's be clear, the only two things that the DACA recipients are suffering through and the individuals that we're suffering through in Florida are two actions that the president made. One is that DACA was unfortunately something that he decided to end on his own arbitrarily back in September. We're now over 122 folks sadly are facing the lack of DACA. And then number two, he overturned a law that was an executive action by Obama that specifically stated that you could not get an assault weapon if you had any questions of mental health illness in your background. So he basically is directly responsible for the fact that this young man sadly received a gun and was able to pass background checks without onerous. Did the FBI fail? Absolutely. Did they not see the system? Absolutely. But the fact that this president, Reverend, is constantly making it about himself instead of about the issues that our country is really trying to grapple with, it's unconscionable. That is not leadership. Furthermore, if we really want to figure out how to end these killings, we actually know what we need to do. And it's not this hand-wringing of adding security guards and making sure that we're arming teachers. That's not a safe environment. We have to take a playbook of what Australia did. Australia had a mass shooting. They saw their children getting killed, and they said, you know what, we are going to actually ban these laws. Right. The fastest way to do that is we ensure that we are not getting money from the NRA. We have to pass a ban on assault weapons. And then we also have to do campaign finance reform, because it's the dirty money, special interests that are basically dictating our politics.
Now, Heather, as Maria just stated, President Obama had an executive order that you could not have people with mental health issues deal with these areas in terms of buying these guns, which was one of the first things that President Trump revoked. Now, we have a shooting here, and as we just heard Gina say, who I'm going back to, there are kill zones in the schools. But even if you had armed guards in the schools, if you've got somebody with an assault weapon, they would just be killed. The issue is still beginning and ending with people having the right to having military weapons that they can shoot with these magazines and just spray and kill people. It doesn't matter how many armed guards you had there. If they can out-arm them,
Exactly. You can have armed guards in school, but these are weapons that are designed to kill. And they're used in military combat, and they're ones that we should not have out here on the streets. And so it's really clear to see that we need to really look at these laws. We need to see how young people are accessing these weapons of mass destruction, basically. I mean, I think it's really sad to see that you're able to get an AR-17, and the background checks are not universal across the country. And so these are really key things that we have to look at if we want to see some change.
Now, minutes ago, President Trump tweeted, quote, "I never said Russia did not meddle in the election. I said it may be Russia or China or another country or group, or it may be a 400-pound genius sitting in bed and playing with his computer. The Russian hoax was that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. It never did." Joining our panel to explain this is MSNBC legal analyst Danny Ceballos. Danny, first of all, he did say many times that there was no Russia interference, that it was a hoax. Now he's trying to have it both ways, and going back to his analogy of the 400-pounders playing with his computer. But clearly, he still will not confront and say, I'm going after Russia. I'm coming with the sanctions that the Congress has already voted. You can't interfere with American democracy. The principles of the country was built on the vote. No taxation without representation. When does he stand up and defend that, Danny?
Well, the one thing that we can look back earlier in your question to what the indictment does establish, it establishes that the Mueller team believes they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and that a citizen grand jury concluded that there was probable cause, that there was Russian involvement, there was Russian interference with the election. The one thing that this establishes is that their Russian activity was not a hoax. President Trump is correct that the indictment does not reference any specific intentional American involvement. He is right that it does not establish any collusion or allegations of collusion or charges of collusion. In fact, the indictment leaves out a lot of things that raise a lot of questions. Specifically, why wasn't the Russian government named? Why have this underlying theme of an election interference if you're not going to charge that specific federal crime? My belief is it's a simple answer. They didn't need to, using conspiracy and other charges, and it's easier for them to prove. But what does this mean going forward? I mean, it does raise the question that if there were no Mueller investigation, would this ever have been discovered by the regular FBI or the regular DOJ investigations? Did it require a Mueller investigation? I mean, in that sense, is Trump partially correct when he says, for now, there is no Russia collusion? But what we've seen from the Mueller team is that they have no problem with successive indictments spread out over a long period of time. What the president sees as the chief executive and the unitary executive, if you believe in that theory, that he as the unitary executive, the head of the DOJ, what are his next steps as to Russia? That remains to be seen. But as the head of the DOJ, there is a lawful obligation there to investigate crime.
Yeah, I think there's also one unsaid thing that it does say, and that is that clearly the Russians wanted to see Trump win. And you can only ask the question, why? Whether there was collusion proven so far or not, why did they want to go out of their way to help Donald Trump become president? Inquiring minds want to know. Thank you to my panel. We'll talk more about gun control later in the show. Meanwhile, the president continues to tweet about the Russian investigation. Quote, if it was the goal of Russia to create discord, disruption, and chaos within the U.S., then with all of the committee hearings, investigations, and party hatred, they have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They are laughing their asses off in Moscow. Get smart, America. Yeah, I think America is going to get smart, Mr. President. Up next, the stock market is up and unemployment is down. It's all thanks to Trump. Or is it? We'll be right back.
At Safe Flight Auto Glass, we know that when you're spending time with the grandkids, every minute counts. And you don't have time for a cracked windshield. That's why at Safe Flight, we'll show you exactly when we'll be there with a replacement you can trust. Hold on, sir.
Looks great.
Thanks for choosing Safe Flight.
Thank you.
Bye. Saving you time so you can keep saving the world.
Safe Flight Repair, Safe Flight Replace.
When you feel the world around you spinning out of control, but you don't ever have to hide what you really feel inside. Put 'em up.
That's my girl! That's it! Get it! Mom!
The game's over. Parents aren't perfect, but then they make us Kraft mac and cheese, and everything's good again.
I'm on the move all day long, and sometimes I don't eat the way I should. So I drink Boost.
Boost High Protein Nutritional Drink has 15 grams of protein to help maintain muscle and 26 essential vitamins and minerals, including calcium and vitamin D. Boost High Protein. Be up for it.
Do you know anybody who's met anybody on Match?
My sister, she met her husband.
And she's living happily ever after, and you've never really considered trying Match?
Sounds kind of silly now, but...
You said it, not me.
Match. Start for free today.
Actually, this is good because I've been meaning to talk to you. Well, you know, you're getting older, and you might be experiencing some sensations. Happened to your dad, with...
Oh, look, the tow truck's here.
Can't wait to be rescued? Esurance Roadside Assistance lets you know when help will arrive. That's insurance for the modern world. Esurance, an Allstate company. Click or call.
You have any questions?
I'm good, I'm good.
Awesome.
We are up against a ruthless, relentless enemy. We need unconventional warriors